The first edition of the Critical View had a number of essays that came from magazines where people had simply written nice, long critical essays about things. Anne Royf had a piece on the Waltons. I put in a piece, Jerzy Kaczynski, who had written Being There, had a piece called A Nation of Idiots. And there were very few academic pieces there, which was great because the book was being used largely in undergraduate classes, and the reading was very accessible but very powerful in many cases, commentary on television. I used a few academic pieces. I used in the first edition, I think, did have a piece by Theodor Adorno, who was one of the major critics of mass media, negative critic of mass media. By the time I got to the second edition, there was a little more academic work, and by the time I got to the third and fourth editions, it was becoming heavily academic. People had published in film studies journals, they had published in other kinds of journals, some very good stuff on different shows, and the book gradually became more academic and probably more useful in graduate courses, although if someone wanted to push their undergraduates to read some of this academic material, it was there. The structure of the book changed over time. I should have looked at some of the early editions before we talked. I think the first one was Watching Television. I forget what the middle section was called, and the third section was called Thinking About Television, which was supposed to be more theoretical. Those headings changed over time. I added sections on history, on industry studies, on the audience, as more studies of audience behavior came out from a humanities perspective. And the book got big. It got much bigger over the years. It was a good academic success for me because it was seen. Anthologies and readers are often not counted as scholarship, but this one generally was, because, to use the term that people later used, it was curated. And when I stopped doing it, people said, "Oh, we like the curatorial aspect of it." And I think it's an overused word, being somewhat protective of curators and museums and so on. But I think that the book did have quite a bit of influence, and the selection process, as I say, changed and became more academic. I think it was still important, and still is important. I mean, I still get a royalty check every year, a small one increasingly. But people go back to the early editions and copy, and we get some payment for that. It was important because it gave people something to show to their department heads, to show to their colleagues and say, look, this is serious stuff. And it coincided in part with the rise of cultural studies, and so that was another factor.